Today I'm going to design a positioning base. To do this, we're going to use the part environment, and we can either sketch on the planes or we can choose the axis system. I will choose the axis system, so I'm going to hide the planes. We'll choose the sketch tool. We'll pick the base plane, which is the XY plane. Here it auto-orientates to the view. We see the vertical and horizontal coordinate. We're going to choose the rectangle tool, and we're going to choose the centered rectangle. We can place this on the middle of our axis system, place as such. We'll choose the constraint tool. If we double click, it allows us to place not just the first dimension, but any follow-up dimensions. We double click and we can edit this value. I'm going to choose 60 and 100. Once we're done with that, we can exit sketch. Now we can choose the extrusion feature. Here we're going to choose pad. By default it's chosen 20 millimeters. I'm just going to reduce that to 10. Click OK. Next I'm going to do a new sketch. This sketch is now going to be on that top plane. Again, it's proposed the vertical and horizontal axis system to us. I'm fine with that. I'm going to choose the line tool, and I will double click this one again. I'm going to go down to a V. And then I'm going to choose the constraint tool. Here I want to set the angle. I'm going to change that to 120 degrees. You'll notice this isn't symmetrical as it is, so we can modify that. I'm going to rotate the part, zoom in. I'll pick one of the endpoints. I'll hold down Control, click the side, and I can set that to coincident by right-clicking. Again, for the other side, I can right-click and set as coincident. This is because I still have my dimension tool active. Now if I press Escape to clear that dimension tool, I can select both ends of these lines, holding Control, so they're both highlighted. I then select my center plane or my center axis system. So now 3 are selected, with this one being the last. Now I can choose the constraints defined in dialog box option. And here there's an option for symmetry. If I tick that, they're now perfectly symmetrical either side of my axis system. Finally, I'll double click the constraint again. I'm going to pick this endpoint, the horizontal axis system, and define a value there. Now what I can do is I can exit that, and I can do the Project 3D Elements button. I can select my rectangular top plane. I can project those elements. There's now a yellow line on the outside. I can choose the trim tool, the quick trim. If I double click that, it will stay active whilst I do the trimming, which I can't do. So instead I'm going to use the trim tool here and select as such. The remainder of the line is now dashed. That means it's a construction element, so it won't be considered for our 3D function. I can exit the sketch. I can press pad, and I can choose the same 10 millimeters again. OK. Now we have our resting V position. Now I wish to add some other slots to this plane. Again, I can choose the sketch tool. I can select that surface. Here I'm going to use the oblong function. Elongated hole. I'm going to click here, drag it down, drag to the side, and I've set the distance there automatically. I'll double click We'll change that to 4. Now we go to the dimension tool. I'm going to offset this from the main axis by 12. I'm going to change the length of it to 10. And you'll notice there isn't a center point here to set the distance if I wanted to choose the center. So instead what we can do is we can click point. If we hover over the line, you'll see that the blue circle next to my cursor is hollow. If I drag down, it will snap to that circle. If I drag down a bit further, you see it's now a pinpointed hole. That means it's snapping onto the center. If I click, that point is now at the center of my line. Whilst it's still highlighted in orange, I'm going to choose the construction element button, which is here. That swaps it to a dot, which is not considered for 3D actions. This means I can now select dimension. It's pre-highlighted. I'll select the horizontal axis. We'll modify that value to 30. And now we're done. We can exit the sketch. We can choose the cutout pocket command. By default, it's 10. We can also just change that to up to last to cut through all 3D elements. Click OK. Now we want the same slot, the mirrored, the other side of our plane. We can do that in multiple ways. First of all, quite straightforward, and probably most convenient, is the mirror tool. We already have the oblong highlighted, otherwise we would have to select that in our tree, the pocket. Now we select the mirroring element, which is going to be our center plane. This is why it's helpful to start most objects with your axis system being in the center of your part. And we click OK. And now we've mirrored this element. If this part was part of an assembly and you wanted to have a screw in one and pattern that by reusing the pattern in a part, that's not something you can do with mirror, so to take that into mind. The other ways around this is if we remove that mirror, we can choose the pattern tool. The reference element can be our x-axis. The object will be our pocket. And now we can set the distance. And if we want that distance to be the same or double what we've placed our current pocket as, we can highlight the spacing. We can type equals and enter. This allows us to now select a parameter to associate with it. We can select the existing pocket. Here we see our value 12 that we placed before. We can click that. And now we've parameterized that as a function. As you'll notice, it's only the same distance the slot is away from the center. So if we click the function element button there, we see the reference parameter. At the end of that, we can just do star 2, so times 2. Click OK. And now we have that patterned equal sides of the center. Click OK. So now if we were to update this, it would follow suit. Again, the mirror function would be the same, but this enables us in a higher level assembly to reuse the pattern. Next, we're going to apply the fillet to the center line here. Change that to 20. We can apply some chamfers to the corners. And like that, we are done. We can take the center axis system and hide it. And there we've got our completed part.